Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. This is Mujib Qazi, and you're watching uh, Voice of Kashmir from the studio of Washington Roundtable. I am very humble and thrilled to have a very special guest with me today, who is a senior human rights activist from Washington, D.C., has dedicated his life towards voicing for the human rights violation that are taking place anywhere in the world, particularly in the South Asia. I am joined by none other than Shahab Karni Sahab. Karni Sahab, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Qazi Sahab.
Thank you very much, and really appreciate for taking the time out. And the issue that I have in my hand today, and I have chosen this one to be because of the circumstances that are surrounding us. I would like to take your take on the situation in Kashmir. Do you think that Kashmir has already been divided?
Very good, valid question, Qazi Sahab. And we are going to keep this segment in English for reasons so that our friends in Washington, D.C. circle can hear us out and understand also the dilemma that the Kashmir is going through. Let me take you back to the Trump administration. So what happened in this? I use the term transaction, Kashmir transaction. Let's use the term for hypothetical reasons.
Hmm.
Trump doctrine or Trump modus operandi was not as the state dictates the protocols of diplomacy. It was all personal, it was all Trump incorporated oriented diplomacy, included his son in law Jared Kushner. So when it comes to Kashmir, there was a thought process between among the family that they're going to be there for at least 8 years in the White House, and Trump is going to win the elections. So whatever they did to serve their personal and commercial interests in transactions, Kashmir became the victim of it. Now you're going to ask me whether I'm creating like a 007 movie script here. No, let me validate my statement by quoting you a couple of scenarios and reconnect the dots here. At the same time, Jared Kushner, after Trump family visited Saudi Arabia with all the sword dancing and the first daughter-in-law sitting among the Saudis, only woman, lady, even from America delegation or Saudi delegation, only. So Trump was selling whatever Arabs were buying into. Woman factor, transactional factor, Khashoggi factor to MBS. So MBS became a partner with Jared Kushner and Trump for commercial reasons. Why? Because at the same time, Saudi Arabia announced a $60 billion oil refinery initiative in Kashmir with Reliance Group, of India. So this was all personal. Same time with Imran Khan and Zulfi Bukhari, look at all the pictures. Personal transactions with Jared Kushner about the assets in New York. I'm not going to go into detail. So this was not a state diplomacy. No State Department official were involved in all these transactional conversation. It was all son-in-law and daughter and mastermind former President Trump. So Kashmir became a victim of this hatching, I will say, commercial or business transaction. Yes, Mujib Qazi sir.
Karni Sahab, I mean, that is a very unique and a different analysis that I have never actually thought on those lines. That Kashmir issue, an issue that we grew up uh, facing these challenges. That there is a 84,000 square miles area which has a 2.24 million people, human being living in it. And you're telling me today that it was a personal transaction. I mean, Kashmir is. Do you think that it was a commodity that was sold to third party? I mean, how can it be a transaction? I'm puzzled.
I'm making a great acquisition here, and through your television network, I think you should be welcoming the other side of this story. I already named the Trump family. Now I'm going to name Imran Khan, Zulfi Bukhari, and company.
Hmm.
For furthering their power base in Pakistan, they did enter into all these shady kind of conversation without even involving our, meaning the Pakistani foreign office into that. How many times we have seen in those conversations diplomats taking part. Where was our foreign office? Where are our diplomats? All the transaction was to consolidate their own power base, one. Now the other stakeholder was our chief of staff. He just wanted to strengthen, and is still doing the same thing, to strengthen his power base. So this was all personal, nothing to do with the state diplomacy, any protocol, any norms, either from United States of America, we call it State Department, or whether our Islamabad-based foreign ministry or diplomats, minus, no involvement, no engagement,
So
no
what you're
engagement even from the National Security Councils from either country.
saying, so what you're saying, what I hear you saying is that the Abrahamic Accord and whatever happened in Middle East, so it wasn't in line with the State Department of United States or from Islamabad. It was purely bilateral
Watershed,
transaction to
all
families.
watershed. I mean, this was all done to have the Middle Eastern markets captured for the Trump holding company.
Wow.
Same is the case with India.
So
Big,
where do
big
you
market.
where do you see the Abrahamic Accord fits in this whole equation? What you're saying, if that is correct?
Well, what happened now? I mean, to further the Abraham, where is that movement now? I mean, look at Saudi Arabia and the relationship with Biden administration. It's all cold. Look at Turkey. They had to reverse the course with the Biden administration. For since January, Biden never made a single call to Imran Khan. So what does that tell you?
Why do you think that is the case?
What does that tell you? Because they are negating the script written by the Trump family, and State Department or the diplomats in America were not part of that. So Biden administration is trying to fix that. So that is part. Biden not calling Imran Khan is reversal of the path that the son-in-law doctrine took place in America.
So the effort by the international community and I mean, obviously, when we have a foreign secretary of state visits the Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India, and trying to come with the negotiation withdrawal of the forces from Afghanistan, and all of that will be reversed. What you're saying, the diplomacy of the United States is taking a U-turn based on the number of terms each party is elected at the office, or who would be leading the Washington D.C. So is that what you're telling us, that that
So
there would not be a consistency of a policy at this?
Mujib Qazi Sahib, we can have a conversation based on logic and whatever we see.
Okay.
Whenever the US, whoever the stakeholder, whether it's the Secretary of Foreign or National Security machine, they are negotiating and having conversation with Army Chief of Staff in Pakistan. They are not negotiating or having conversation with Imran Khan administration. So is there any answer?
So let me take you to the situation that is being developed on grounds. Recently, Prime Minister of India Modi invited a hand-picked politician from Indian-occupied Kashmir, who up until last month were considering that they were not being treated as an equal citizen of India. They have always served the interest of India, and now they were pretty much house arrest or in the jail for the last almost 2 years. Now the second anniversary of August 5th is approaching, and right a month before that, he invites those 14 people and asks them to present a demand, exactly the same demand that Modi would have expected or would have undertaken otherwise. How do you see that, and how do you see that linkage between this developing story as well as Abrahamic Accord, and what you are saying, that Pakistani Foreign Office is being left out, and then the relationship is only being negotiated between COAS, the Chief of Army Staff?
Let me connect you on the dots here. This past Friday, today is what? Today is when we are recording this. Today is Wednesday. Uh, Past Friday, there was Abdullah and Ashraf Ghani they were in White House for 2 days. Active engagement, conversation with Biden administration on Afghanistan, Taliban stakeholder. They were staying in Willard in Washington D.C. If you're familiar with that, all hosted by the U.S. government. Not a single representation from either Pakistani civilian administration or the Pindi boys which we are called chief of staff that you just mentioned. This is Afghan situation. Now
Hmm.
coming back to Kashmir situation and Modi meeting all the stakeholders, so-called stakeholder, which I mean, this is going to be a very harsh reality. Most of them are sellout anyway. They go where the big bucks are. Those Kashmiri leadership, so-called, for last almost 70 years, third generation of those leadership are fake, and they go for the highest bidder. So nothing concrete is going to come out of that. I will say entertainment, lunches, and dinners, because the indigenous Kashmiris are not at the table for negotiation. So
So,
this is not going to work. This is not going to work.
so August 5th is coming, and you will see the Kashmiri diaspora probably protesting in Washington, New York, and other parts of the world. And you will see maybe conferences being held, releases being released, and Kashmiri diaspora making the cry out. So what do you think? Will that have an impact at the Washington if they are completely unmoved?
Well, understand, please, the Washington machine, whether we are talking about State Department or White House national security or the intelligence machines, NSA and CIA and everything, they are not stupid, Kazi Saab. I mean, they know the ground realities more than what we know. So they know the Kashmiri diaspora is so-called divided. I mean, where the people from Kashmir, so-called Azad Kashmir, look at the elections, which are being held in Azad Kashmir. Do you think this Azad Kashmir is Azad? Come on. I mean, PTI or whoever government is in Islamabad, they try to overcome all the political parties or machine in Azad Kashmir. So this is not Azad. So whatever you see the activity in Washington D.C. or in Belgium or in London by the Kashmiri activist, you need to define and conclude who are those indigenous activists, or they really mean business, or they're just proxies for certain interest, whoever is paying for their biryani and korma in Washington D.C.
Well,
I don't want to be harsh, but those are the facts. I've been here for 32 plus years in Washington. This is what I say. Whoever pays for their transportation, korma biryani, those activists play the game in Washington D.C.
Well, it is a sad reality, and I would have to leave it right there because I am extremely puzzled by the analysis that you have presented. And the very reason is that, when we were growing up, we heard this notion that Kashmir was sold for some pennies per human being at back in the days about 200 years ago. And we are back in the same situation right now that Kashmir is being treated as a transaction, not a legitimate demand by the people of Kashmir who are suffering. And you can see, over 10 million people are in an open jail, and the world is going in circle, and basically we are all beating the bushes and not getting to any sort of resolve to this dilemma. Well, I appreciate your services for the human rights, and hope to see you at Washington for raising the voice for them again. Thank you for giving us the time, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
God
Thank you.
bless you. Thank you, sir.
God bless you. Bye.